Okay, in this section, we're finishing off by adding some important elements, and of course, it's always good to go back and check against how you lined it up in the camera view. Just adding more geometry to make the hand look more like a hand, using simple shapes like rounded cubes and cylinders, and you can then use edit mode to shear pixels, or sorry, vertices, to create a sort of, well, almost like almost like sculpting, but done obviously with the intention to minimize any potential for vertices being overlapped. Unity really doesn't like to have in the same mesh. So any techniques like sculpting that might fold over or sort of smudge over, imagine if you had a blanket, if you had a ripple in that blanket, and then you kind of folded that ripple over itself. That's what Unity doesn't like, that sort of overlapping of vertices within the same surface, because Unity is trying to do its interpretation of a rig, and it needs to try to imagine how it could interpret the arrangement of vertices for mapping to a skeleton, even though you've really already done it in something like Blender or Maya or Mixamo. And here, just it's a good idea to turn off the armature from time to time to get a sense of how it's really looking. I mean, this is almost looking more like a cartoonish, almost looks like a Mickey Mouse type hand, or a sort of character like that, some character that used to have white gloves. And we'll do materials for the hand later, but you don't want to get too ahead of yourself in case you run into a situation then things won't import into Unity. So you'll see in the next video after this one, when we actually get to the stage where we bring things into Unity to test how they look. And I'm happy to say that actually, having done that video already, things will work out quite well. So the camera view helps to approximate what you're going to see in the Unity game, and it gives you a sense of what elements you need to focus on. You'll see in a moment. If not, I think it's in this video, yeah, that you can actually the sleeve of the material or clothing that's supposed to be represented on the forearm over that bone. It goes a long way to kind of hiding the wrist and sort of the back of the hand. So uh, you'll even see that in some ways this effort here is actually almost overdone, overkill, because you won't even necessarily see a lot of it. That being said, it's good to have something there, because again, if something's supposed to happen where you're doing reloading type animation, or like some other sort of hand activity, you can always obviously go back and add some things later, but sometimes it depends what your style is or what you're trying to accomplish. And there I'm just showing how the edit mode can help kind of take the shapes that you've used to kind of build on top. Keep in mind that, of course, with the one forearm bone or wrist bone or hand bone, you can have multiple meshes bound to a single bone, parented to a single bone, that bone is the parent of those meshes. You cannot have multiple bones parenting one mesh. Okay, that's the sort of, if you have finger joint. Uh, Obviously, the finger joints are an extension of the bones coming through the wrist and through the hand, and it sort of works through this sort of hierarchy. That's how inverse kinematics versus forward kinematics is derived. Okay, I'm not doing anything fancy like that here. I'm just doing regular bones. Point being that you can have these multiple blocks sort of stacked on top of one another to represent the wrist. And just keep in mind they don't have to really cover the bone like there. The bone never really appears. You'll actually see in Unity, of course, that it's there, but the skeleton is never really well shown or represented in the game space. Just using a cylinder here to, uh, you know, now represent the forearm, and same idea again. Set it up to represent almost like a giant marshmallow going through a stick figure kind of thing. The different modes are useful. There's wireframe. There's the sort of having the front bone projection, if you will, in the menu setting there on the right hand side. That one I find sometimes confusing. As you've seen in these videos, a lot of times I'll just turn things off and on in the menu system so I can just quickly see where the bone is again and kind of remember how it looked, and then turn it back in. There you can see I turned the armature off, and I just wanted to see it. And you do that too because you just want to see how it's, you get an approximate sense here of how this looks. Now this jacket right now, this forearm, it almost looks like a fur coat or a heavy coat. Like it looks really big, and it looks kind of, and that could be good. I mean, that could be what you want for this. You know, you just keep refining the process in terms of getting a sort of shape that you really expect for a character that you're going for, in terms of location, if this is an Arctic, if this is an astronaut with a spacesuit, or is this a character that's wearing some sort of armor? Is it more like a robotic mech anime, suit of armor type, space armor, whatever? Um, do you want to make something that's like a, caveman who's very, not even wearing something, like more that you have to pay more attention than to sort of sculpting it more, shaping it more like a real arm. I mean, here the cylinder is obviously representing like a jacket or a piece of, garment that sort of has a sleeve that sort of covers over. Depends what you're doing. It's pretty tenable, and you get good results with even low poly sort of basic bare bones modeling. You'll see that here what I do is I go into edit mode, I select all the vertices, and I do some decimation. And it gives, if you do too much, it looks like a piece of firewood. But if you do just a bit, it can almost look like a sort of fold in the fabric or a stylized effect. And that really looked good here. And then you go back and you're good.